Hello, and welcome to the Lucky Brain Tumor podcast. I'm so excited to have with me today Michelle. I am your host, Emily Truel. So, Michelle, thank you so much for joining me for this episode.
Yeah, it's my
So,
pleasure.
I know that you were diagnosed with an acoustic neuroma or vestibular schwannoma brain tumor. Can you tell me a little bit about what it was like getting diagnosed with an acoustic neuroma?
Yeah, sure. So I was diagnosed back 13 years ago now. I was 27 years old, so fairly young on the spectrum of acoustic neuromas, back at least at the time. Um, I randomly woke up one day and I had lost some hearing in my ear. It sounded like a speaker was blown out in my car, and it was mild. It ended up only being about 10% of my hearing loss on my affected ear. But because I was so young, I was like, this is not normal. I am terrified that tomorrow I'm going to wake up with another 10%. So I got into the ENT, the ear, nose, and throat doctor, pretty quickly. I just literally was like, who's the person that has the next appointment that I can get into? Got diagnosed fairly quickly. Luckily, my ENT that I saw was pretty much right out of med school. And so she was like, oh, yeah, I had read about one of this. Maybe because it's single sided death, it could be this tumor. It's probably not, but let's just get an MRI to rule it out. So I did have a little bit of that kind of journey where most people have, where like, oh, maybe it's wax, and they try to dig out all the wax in your ears. And then I ended up getting two steroid shots in my eardrum, which is not pleasant at all, let me tell you. Till finally she was like, oh, okay, get an MRI, and I got the results, and she was like, okay, it's this acoustic neuroma tumor. So that's how I got diagnosed. It was fairly quick, kind of like a whirlwind, crazy adventure because I was so young.
Wow, yeah, and that can be unusual to get diagnosed so quickly and to have everyone so aware of acoustic neuromas. A lot of times there's a fight for diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, yep. So I was lucky. Like I didn't have to have that uncertainty, go to doctors for years. I was able to like within like a month, I had my hearing loss, and I had known that it was a tumor, and I was like, all right, let's get a move on. Like let's get moving. Let's get this process going. So that was good.
and how big was your brain tumor?
1.4 centimeters.
Okay. So, what did you choose for your treatment and what were the reasons behind your choice?
Yeah. So I went to a bunch of local doctors. Again, this was back in 2012. So there was not like Facebook groups. There was not like the whole virtual options that there are now. So the only research that I could do was from the Acoustic Neuroma website, and they had a discussion board, like the old school discussion board. So I was like scouring those. And then there was an acoustic neuroma support group in my local area in the Washington, D.C. area that my mom reached out to them. My mom is a nurse, so she was like, I am on this. Like, let's do all the research. So there wasn't a meeting like right around the time where I got diagnosed, but my mom made a phone call to the two co-leaders at the time, and then talked to a bunch of other people in the support group to hear their stories. So we went to a couple local surgeons. Um, because I was so young, and it was, a while ago, they were like, well, radiation, there's just not enough long term viability to know what is the long term effects. Like, ideally you have like 60 more years to live. So we're just not sure. So nobody recommended radiation for me personally, which was, kind of a blessing because I was like, okay, there's the two big options, either surgery or radiation. And that took one off the table. So then I was down to surgery, and then it was a matter of what kind of surgery. So a lot of the local doctors, actually, I scheduled a surgery with having the retrosigmoid approach. But because my only symptom that I knew of really at the time was mild hearing loss, I really wanted, that was my number one concern, is hearing preservation. And so my mom kept doing research and talked to people in the local support group, and they heard about this place in California. So, and they do free phone consults. So I sent my MRIs out there for them to review, and they were like, well, we're not sure exactly based on the location of your tumor, but what we would do is fly you out to California, and the day of your pre-op test, we'll do balance tests, closer MRI, things like that, and we'll decide, are you a candidate for middle fossa, which is normally reserved for smaller tumors, but it has a better chance of hearing preservation. Or if we can't do it, then we'll go ahead and do retrosigmoid. And because of that slimmer of hope that I could do middle fossa, I called up my local surgeon and I canceled my surgery and I rescheduled to fly out to California, all the way across the country from Virginia to California, to have the middle fossa approach. And they were able to preserve my hearing. So the gamble paid off. And so I still only have like 10% hearing loss in my affected ear, which, as you know, warriors on this acoustic journey know, even the surgeons walked out from my post-op and he said, results not typical. So, and I didn't have any balance or facial nerve issues whatsoever. So, honestly, it was a slam dunk going out there. So I can't say I'm very, very, very lucky to have the outcome that I had.
That is amazing. You're kind of a unicorn, but it's awesome to know a unicorn and have someone with that amazing story. It's so great when you're in the thick of those really difficult decisions and you're trying to figure out what to do. It can be so stressful and hard. And I'm sure like pulling the trigger on making the call to go to California was not easy. It's wonderful that it worked out so wonderfully for you. So
Yeah.
that's awesome. So tell us a little bit about what recovery was like for you from your surgery.
Yep. So because I flew across the country, you stay out in California. So I was in the hospital for 3 days. And then I stayed out in California for 10 days post-op. A lot of people are very interested and worried about like how it's flying, especially after surgery, but the ear pressure and the cabin pressure was not an issue at all. I made sure to do a red eye flight, and I made sure like we upgraded me to first class because I was like, I just want to have like more space, be in comfort, be ready. I tried to get a wheelchair for the airport because you're like, there's a lot of walking and it's a lot of chaos. It ended up that they took so long. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to walk. But, the airport in LA, it was in LA. It wasn't so bad. It wasn't crazy. But I had no issues with flying home, with the ear pressure, with motion sickness, which was a symptom that I had before my surgery, which I never attributed to my acoustic neuroma, but I had horrendous motion sickness. And after my tumor was removed, that motion sickness is now gone. So I actually had benefits from my surgery. So the flying was totally fine. When I was out in California, I was able to, we got a villa down in Newport Beach. So I was able to like walk on the beach, go to the pier. We had some friends and my uncle lived up there. We were like visit some. Of course, I was, taking naps, resting, but it actually was like kind of a mini vacation, which was nice. Obviously, since I was like the patient, it was fine for me, but like my family was like that was not a vacation. They were stressed and worried. So like that's a little PTSD for them. But I was like, I was sleeping and hanging out, and I knew I was fine. I wasn't worrying about somebody else. So in a way, sometimes like you being the patient feels a little easier and better. So then I flew home after 10 days. I was off work for 6 weeks. And again, I was so young. I only had a fiance. I didn't have any kids yet. I only had like a little 10-pound dog to take care of. And my job at work was before the time that I even had email on my phone. So like I didn't even check my email for 6 weeks. Like nobody emailed me. I was just like a senior at work. I wasn't even like important enough for anybody to be like to even feel stressed about my job. So honestly, it was kind of a really good time in life to just take 6 weeks off, completely relax, have zero responsibilities, so I could completely focus on my rest, my recovery, taking it super easy. At first you're taking naps every single day, if not all day. And then you slowly work up to like, okay, I can go to the grocery store and then I'll come home and take a nap. Or like, I can take a shower and then I have to nap the rest of the day. So it's slow, but after the 6 weeks, after like 4 weeks, I felt like I would have been able to drive, but because I live in Northern Virginia area, I was like, there's no point in getting on the road when it's crazy out there and risking anything. So I didn't drive until like 5.5 weeks. But right at 6 weeks post op, I went back to work full time, 9 to 5. I mean, my job is just at a desk. Like it's not anything physically demanding. But I did commute like an hour each way, back and forth. And after 6 months, after 6 weeks, I just went back and never looked back. But again, results not typical because I was 27. So like that, I really had that youth factor on my side of being able to like bounce back very quickly.
And I think the rest factor too. I think that not everybody is in that kind of privileged position to be able to really just like not do life for 6 weeks. That's amazing that you had that. And I think that probably also really helped with your recovery because, I mean, rest is the most important thing. So,
Yeah, I know. And now, of course, now I have 2 children and a dog, and life is crazy. Like when I talk to other patients, I'm like, just try to rest, relax. But like, there's, it's just not possible these days. And even with like, even if you take a 6 week break from work, like nobody's going to actually take a break. Like you're going to be checking your email. You're going to feel guilty. Like you're going to be calling somebody to help. Like it really was kind of the best time to have it. There's no good time to have a brain tumor, but like, and of course I was so young. I was like, I don't know if I can fit in this surgery. Like I have to be a bridesmaid in a wedding. I'm going to like the Bahamas for a wedding. Like I was in peak like social, like all my friends were getting married. We were doing bachelorette parties. Like we were doing everything. But I was like, you know what? There's never going to be a break in life. And I was like, the quickest I can get it. So I really did kind of power through like from the time I got diagnosed to when my surgery, it was only 4 months because my mindset was like, this is a treatable tumor. I want to get it out when it's as small as possible. I honestly was terrified that I would wake up any day with more hearing loss. So my mindset was just like, I want to get it taken out now. I want to get it fully taken out and I just want to move on with my life, which is kind of a naive and like optimistic viewpoint for a kid to have. But I think it served me well, actually.
absolutely. Yeah, it's not as black and white as we want it to be. Like you have a brain tumor, you don't, or like it's treated and it's over. Like it's definitely much more of a process and a journey than we'd like it to be. But the flip side is, you weren't wrong to worry about losing more neurological function. Waking up with more hearing loss is a very real thing, or even other symptoms starting like increased motion sickness and various things. So in that respect, taking care of it to preserve as much function as possible was definitely a good idea. So, out of this whole journey, what did you find was the most unexpected part of receiving an acoustic neuroma diagnosis?
I mean, honestly, everything. Like, you, and I think one thing is also like people do it all the time, but like going on a medical journey, you learn a lot. Like, the number one thing is you have to be your own advocate. Like, you think and hope that doctors and nurses out there would be in your best interest and would want to help you. And that's kind of like what you're raised to believe. And the harsh reality is, once everybody who has gone on any kind of medical journey for themselves or for loved ones, it's a hard shock to learn that like if you're not your own advocate very, very strongly, nobody is going to treat you and have more importance than you and your family and your loved ones. So I think that was the most unexpected part. But once you learn that, like, you got to be strong. You have to push for what you want. You can't just wait around and be like, they're going to call me. Like they know they're thinking about me. Like, and you kind of got to put your manners aside a little bit and be like, I'm following up. I'm going to be a little bit rude. Like it's everybody's nature. And especially mine, like as a people pleaser, to be kind and have manners and not bother people. But like, if you don't do that, the sad reality is things might not get done, and they might not get done in the right way. So I think that was definitely the most unexpected part of being on any sort of medical journey.
That's great advice. Yeah, you're trained to just take whatever the doctor says and run with it. And unfortunately, like doctors are not all created equally and they don't all have the same knowledge or the same experience. And so the first doctor you talk to, maybe they've seen one of these or none of these because they are rare brain tumors. And it's really important to actually find the doctors who are knowledgeable. And I
Mm-hmm.
certainly know that even with the right doctors, administration in medical situations isn't always as perfect as you'd like it to be. And so you really have to track everything and follow
Mm-hmm.
it yourself because, they've got so many different patients. It's easy for stuff to get dropped and it's too important to let
Yeah.
that happen to you.
Yeah.
So,
And insurance is a whole nother beast. Like, there's just so many things and so many stressful things while you're literally just trying to recover from a brain surgery at the same time as doing all of that. So, obviously, like, I think one of the major things is having a support system as well. Um, so important, and you can't overlook. Hopefully, people can find a good support system that can help you through.
yeah, my next question was going to be what helped you most with your diagnosis. And I feel like you just answered that. And I totally agree that your support system can really make or break the experience. And like you're talking about being a people pleaser, it can be really hard to lean on that support system, but it's so important, not just for you, but also for them because they love to be able to take care of you. They love you and they care about you. And seeing you go through this is so hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I think definitely that helped. My mom was a nurse. So even though we had like a surgery on the books, she was like, let's just keep doing more research. And that's when she like talked to more people and found out more things. And she discovered there's this place out in California to go. So I think my biggest piece of advice, and it's different for everyone. Me personally, I'm like a researcher. I want to know everything. So like I was like, I'm gonna research every single thing until I can't anymore. Like till you get to a point where you're like, okay, it's too much. I can't take any more information in. But like that was kind of my mindset, like research, 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 trying to find exactly like you were saying, surgeons that are experienced or doctors that are experienced with acoustic neuromas. Um, these are rare, and you can't just go to any brain surgeon. You can't just go to any reputable hospital in your area. You have to make sure that that doctor, either radiation or surgery, has experience specifically in acoustic neuromas. And, ideally, you don't want them doing 10 a year. You want them to doing hundreds to thousands a year because they are so nuanced and they are such a different and unique brain tumor and a different approach that even if they're doing brain surgeries all day, every day, if they're not doing acoustic neuromas, it's not necessarily going to be the best indicator of your outcome unless they're very experienced in specifically acoustic neuromas.
Yes, I totally agree. So you talked a lot about all your awesome outcomes, which is so wonderful. But would you say was the part that you struggled with the most, or what was the hardest part of the whole journey for you?
Yeah, I think, let's see. Looking back now, I honestly had no idea. In hindsight, now I realize that like I actually did have more symptoms attributed to my tumor than I thought. Like I used to have headaches. I used to pop Advil like 3, 4 times a week. And I just thought it was normal. Like it was back when commercials were on, and I was like, well, there's always commercials for Advil, so like people must be taking it. Like I said, I had horrible motion sickness. I even had like this metallic taste in my mouth from time to time. And I was like, ew, the water is bad today. Like it tastes like straight metal. And then my fiance's like, I don't know what you're talking about. But like you don't attribute it. It was so infrequent, and nothing ever like came together for me to be like, I think maybe I have a brain tumor. Like, so I think that is kind of like looking back. I think it's easy for people to live with their symptoms for a while and never attribute it to an acoustic neuroma until maybe it's very drastic, like their hearing's basically gone, or they have some facial nerve issues, or their balance is so bad that they fall. Like over the years, I was cracking up because every single time I went to reach for a glass, I would knock it over, and I was like, I'm not normally a clumsy person and I don't know what's happening. Like I cannot physically pick up a glass of water without spilling it and never thought anything of it. And then after my surgery, I was like, you know what? My balance nerve was probably impaired. I was getting headaches, all of these things, like looking back now, put together the full picture. And really the only reason I know now is from having conversations with other patients and being like, you're right, I had that too. Or like now that I'm like, okay, I don't have headaches anymore, but I used to before. And now my motion sickness is, it's not gone, but it's way drastically better. I think that was kind of I can see why it takes some people, years and years and years to get diagnosed. And by then the tumor has been growing for, who knows? My tumor probably was growing for 10 years. Like, who knows how long they normally grow slowly, but, we never know. So,
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think it can be really subtle. And it's funny how you can like talk yourself into thinking like, oh, this is normal or this isn't a big deal. Like I had gotten new shoes and I was struggling to like balance on one leg in my exercise class. And I was like, I just can't get used to these shoes.
yeah,
It's like, that's not a normal thing when you buy new shoes. But like at the time it made sense to me. Or
yeah,
I had literally fallen off of an exercise bike, like a stationary bike but just once. And I thought it was so funny. I was like, who does that? Like, that's so random. How did I manage that? But like, then I was okay because it's not necessarily consistent. And so
yeah.
it's
I
easy to
went,
just be like, it's fine. It's like boiling a
yeah.
frog, right? Like a little wrong, a little wrong, a little wrong, and you don't notice it.
I went skiing before my surgery, and I'm a pretty good skier. Like I've been skiing my whole life, and I was literally on the flat part, so I was like going super fast, and I just ate it like so bad. My whole body was like bruised, and I was like, I literally was like, I don't even know what happened. Like I have no idea. And then after, I'm like, my balance was off.
And it is funny how it is like that. Like you think it's going to be all the time, but it isn't necessarily. It'll be like a moment where like it just is like, and then it comes back, like because the nerve signals are really scrambled, right? So it's sort of like a glitchy signal.
Yeah.
It's wild and not necessarily what you would envision for a balance issue with a brain tumor.
hmm
So you've gone through all these different things. What's been something positive or good that this situation has brought into your life that maybe you didn't have before?
Yeah. So shortly after my surgery, right when I was in the hospital, the Washington D.C. Leaders were like, "Hey, do you want to come to we have a support meeting coming up? Do you want to join us?" And I was like, "Sure." So I went. I was only like 2 months post-op, and I show up to this meeting, and it's a bunch of all sweet, sweet people. And I show up, and I'm like, "Hi, I'm 27," and honestly, their jaws like hit the floor because at that time, it was 13 years ago, like the majority of people that had acoustic neuromas were an older population. So I was the very youngest to come into that group, and my outcome was great. And so um, I loved being involved in that community. I kept going to the meetings just to hear stories and to give hope to people to say good outcomes can happen. And over the years, shortly after that, the DC group asked me to become a co-leader. So I became that, and I helped, kind of bring their group into the 20th century. Like I made us an emailing list so we could easily blast out emails. It was way before COVID, so we were meeting in person 2, 3 times a year, which was great. And then shortly, right when COVID hit, is when you decided to create the young adult support group and kindly asked me to be a co-leader of that. And so it's really great. So now I meet with acoustic neuroma support groups 3 times a year for both groups. So like 6 times a year or nine, yeah, no, six times a year. And it's just such a great way to hear people's stories and give back and try to give people hope to say, you read all these things, and especially on the internet, like on Facebook, there's a lot of people who are down on themselves and kind of, you know, it's a little dire out there. And the people, it really is like the people who are in support groups are the people who need support the most. And so I like to stay involved so I can kind of be a little ray of hope and sunshine and say it's not all, you know, it is scary. It's very scary, but we've all been through it. There is hope on the other side. So that's been really rewarding and fulfilling for me. Just to be able to help people in any way I can. And I'm also a peer mentor with the acoustic neuroma group. So from time to time, people will just call me up and say, you know, I'm here on my journey. I have questions. I have comments. So it's a great way to just easy, very easy, you know, take an hour out of your day, and it really, really helps tremendously on somebody's journey when they're in the thick of it, when it's the most terrifying. They don't know what to do. Sometimes it's just that connection with one person to hear their personal story and be able to ask whatever questions they want. And then I'm available to text or email and follow up. So it's been really, really great.
Yeah, I totally agree. Being able to lighten someone's burden on like their worst day, that's huge. And I feel like it's such a gift to be able to give that to people. So I agree. The Acoustic Neuroma Association is amazing. It's out there doing great work to help everyone. If you have not connected with the Acoustic Neuroma Association, I really highly recommend you do it. There's amazing resources, tons of it are free. And even if you are recently diagnosed, you can join for a free membership for the first year, which is so amazing because you really need it then. So I definitely encourage you to reach out. And the support groups are wonderful. And Michelle, you are an amazing support group leader, and I am so grateful for you and for your help. I know that you've made a difference in so many people's lives, and that's just such a beautiful thing. So thank you for all that you do, Michelle.
Thank you.
Yes. And to wrap us up here, what would you like anyone who has an acoustic neuroma to know? Like, if there is one piece of advice that you would give them to take with them, what would that be?
Yeah. So I kind of hit on a lot of them during the conversation, but definitely do enough research, find an experienced surgeon. And the thing is with acoustic neuromas, like the hard part is there's not a cut and dry answer. There's no right answer for everybody. There's only the answer that feels right for you and that you feel comfortable with. So make sure that you're doing enough research and you're looking into an experienced doctors to make the decision that feels right for you. Because honestly, after you make, that's all you can do. That's all you can control. And once you have your treatment, you have to live with that decision. And so the only thing that you can tell yourself is I did my best that I could do. And I did all that I can do, because that will help you move forward into your new normal. Whatever that looks like, whatever it is, you definitely don't want to, some people don't have time. Like some people have to get rushed into surgery because their tumors are big, or, you know, circumstances. But like, if you have the time, try to make sure to really think through what treatment plan feels right for you. And then whatever happens, happens, and you can move on. And then, like I said, good outcomes can happen. Like it's rare. Like they said, results not typical, but like it can happen if you go to experienced surgeons or doctors. And honestly, I was lucky because mine was fairly on the small to medium side, but still on the smaller side, which obviously some people don't have that luxury. But I think those are my main points that I like to hit on a lot.
Yeah, I think those are wonderful. I think hope is so important, and to know that it's not just like life is going to be terrible because you got diagnosed with a brain tumor. And so I think that's a beautiful message to share, and people will really appreciate hearing that.
Okay.
So, thank you so much for your time today, Michelle. This was great.
Thank you for all that you do.
You bet. Have a great day.
Bye.